Quality, comfort, and grip at an affordable price. Whether it's our standard, pro, or elite socks, there's an option for everyone. Try a pair for yourself now at puregripsocks.com.
With the holiday season, and more specifically Black Friday, quickly approaching, every brand and retailer will be trying to entice you to buy a new pair of football boots. However, just because the price is good doesn't mean the boots are. So with that in mind, here is every football boot that is not worth it in 2025. And really quickly before we keep going, drop a like on the video if you enjoy the content, and if you appreciate the unsugar-coated, unsponsored, brutally honest opinions on this channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button along with the little bell notification so you don't miss out on my reviews of all the latest football boots of 2025. Now this first one might surprise a few people, but hear me out for the explanation. The made in Germany Adidas Predator Precision remake has come out in a couple different colorways so far, all of which retail for $300, which is obviously a lot of money for a single pair of football boots, and at that price, you can effectively buy anything. Where of course I've said in multiple reviews, I'm personally a really big fan of these, and I actually think it's the best iteration of a Predator Precision remake from Adidas so far. I even like it paired up with the current Predator sole plate tooling. However, if you're buying these football boots with the expectation that they are going to stack up well against any of the modern football boots, either from Adidas or any other brand, you are going to be very disappointed. Because even though they look really cool, and I definitely think the quality is there, this is still a football boot that came out 25 years ago, and by modern day standards, it feels extremely bulky. In other words, unless you had a pair of Predator Precisions way back in the day and you're looking for something that feels as close to those football boots as possible, this is probably not a great choice for the vast majority. Certainly if you're comparing this Predator Precision remake to the current Predator 25, the difference is truly night and day. Where this year, perhaps more than ever, Adidas is really playing the nostalgia card, but do keep in mind that unless you are looking for a nostalgic experience by modern day standards, this is probably not what you're looking for. And honestly, the same can be said about a lot of one-to-one remakes. While they're mostly sold out at this point, the Vapor 1 remake is also not a great example of a modern day Mercurial. There's obviously been some modernization to that boot as a whole, but in general, if you're looking for the best of the best in terms of performance characteristics from a pair of football boots, don't buy a remake. Unless it's a modern interpretation of a remake, in which case I think the boots can actually be really good, the new F50 Plus remake being a great example of that. $285, $295, and $305. What do all three of these boots have in common? Well, they're probably all more expensive than they realistically need to be, but they're also all the same football boot, the Superfly 10 Elite, just in different colorways. Where I do want to be clear in pointing out that Nike have put a premium on signature colorways for quite some time now. We're used to paying that extra 20 bucks for a CR7 or Mbappe signature in the case of this orange pair, but we're now seeing price increases on regular colorways of 10 and sometimes even $20 for seemingly no reason at all. And it's not even just with the Mercurials, it's with pretty much all of their football boots. The Legend 10 once upon a time retailed for $240, now certain colorways are all the way up to $260 for no reason, and every colorway of Phantom 6 varies by $10 to $20 too. My point being that unless you are an absolute colorway snob and you must have this kind of muted greenish yellow color on your Mercurial boots, take a look at some of the earlier colorways that retailed for less to begin with and have probably since been marked down, because you're going to get the exact same football boot for a lot less money. Where of course, this is just my opinion, but I really don't think it's worth it to pay a premium for a certain colorway unless they do something absolutely crazy. And at the same time, I also don't think we should be supporting and reinforcing what Nike is currently doing in seemingly just making up the prices and adding premiums for basically no reason. The older colorways fit, feel, and perform just as good as the newer ones. So why would you pay more for the same thing. It's a pretty common scenario in a lot of my reviews to compare football boots, and ultimately when it comes to your final buying decision, the price is going to be a pretty big factor, where very often I say I really like this boot, but for what it costs, there are several others that I would personally rather have. But of course, once that football boot gets marked down, now it maybe becomes a little bit more of an appealing option. Not the case with the Puma Future 8 Ultimate. Even at 50% off, I just don't think they're very good. Where of course, that's not to say that you couldn't have a really positive experience with the Future 8, but if we were to say, hypothetically, that you could get these for 50% off, so they go from $240 to $120. If you looked at and tried on all the other options that you could get for that amount of money, $120, I would venture to guess that the vast majority of people would find at least one, if not several football boots that fit better, felt better, and that they ultimately just liked more than the Future 8. Where I've said it in my reviews, and I'll continue to say it, the Future 8 Ultimate isn't just a bad football boot for how much it costs, it's just not a very good football boot, period. The 2014 Nike Magista Obra was an absolutely revolutionary pair of football boots that a lot of people had and really enjoyed. However, 11 years later, it's become a bit of a trend to go and seek out your all-time favorites. And because there is such a demand for older boots right now, the resale market has gone a little bit crazy, which is why in 2025, 11 years later, I do not think that it's worth it to go out and pay double retail plus for your old favorites. And that's not to say that you couldn't still have a great experience in an 11-year-old pair of Magista Obras, and certainly from a performance standpoint, they aren't going to hold you back. But if we are again to throw out a number of $500, which I think is pretty conservative for a new pair of Magista Obras in 2025, do I think any football boot is worth $500? Absolutely not. Where don't get me wrong, if you have the money to spend and they're your absolute favorite boots, then by all means go and buy them. But if you're just after the best boots possible, obviously you can have fond memories of something, but trust me when I say 11 years on, you might be surprised at how disappointing your old favorites can be, because believe it or not, and as much as we all love these boots, knitted uppers in particular, especially mid-cut ones, have come a long way from a comfort standpoint. And again, if you're just after the best boots for what you pay, if you're not too picky with colorways and you shop what's on sale, you could probably get 3+ pairs of Nike Phantom 6s, the current model, for less than the cost of one 11-year-old Magista Obra. Not to mention, when you're getting into football boots that are 10+ years old and have been sitting around for a long time, depending on how they were stored and depending on the materials that they were made out of, they might not have aged the best, and there is a very high probability that the boots that you just spent your life savings on could break a lot more quickly than you might expect. Long story short, paying a huge premium for a pair of your old favorites might seem like a good idea, but when it comes to actually playing in them, I can assure you that 9 out of 10 times it's probably not worth it. In a lot of ways, I do think the Tiempo Legend 10 Elite from Nike is a little overhated, and obviously if you're after something with a natural leather upper, these are just not for you. But if you like the idea of a synthetic leather and you like the appearance of the Legend 10, it is truthfully not a bad pair of football boots, especially if you can find them deeply discounted in older colorways. In that scenario, they are definitely worth it. However, in newer colorways at anywhere near the $260 retail price, I just don't think these are worth the money, where boots like the New Balance Tequila V5 Elite, the Messi F50 Elite, honestly even the Sokito Scudetta, all football boots that you maybe wouldn't expect to compare that closely to a Tiempo, all feature variations of a synthetic leather similar to the Fly Touch Plus material on this Legend 10, that along with other fit, feel, and comfort characteristics, I would argue all make for better feeling football boots. Where again, not that you couldn't have a great experience from these football boots, but at anywhere near 250 bucks, you can have a much better experience for a lot less money. And then finally, on the table here in front of me are 3 excellent and very underrated football boots that I definitely think you should try, but once again, I don't think anybody should be buying them for anywhere near the normal retail price. And that's because all 3 of these brands in the grand scheme of football boot market share are just nowhere near as popular as the big 2 in Nike and Adidas. Puma, definitely known as the 3rd place brand, is not in a great place right now. And because they're not in a great place, most of their boots, especially in older colorways, can be found very deeply discounted, where for half off, sometimes even less than that, something like a Puma Ultra 6 Ultimate or even an Ultra 5 Ultimate is one of the best speed boots you can get for the money. The same thing can be said for basically all top-end Skechers products. Between the SKX2 and the Razor, both great top-end football boots, at $225 full retail, you just don't have to pay that. Wait for them to go on sale and then pull the trigger. And then of course, New Balance. As a whole, I think the brand is making some really good stuff, but the popularity just isn't there. They release new colorways all the time, but take a look at the older ones that stores have been sitting on for quite some time, and I guarantee you'll be able to find the exact same football boots for significantly less than the usual $215. In other words, because they're not popular at all, you don't have to really worry about them selling out, but just have a little bit of patience and you'll be able to save yourself a ton of money, because if you buy any of these at full retail and then see 2 weeks later that they go on sale, not only will that price you have paid be not worth it, you'll also be really disappointed that you could have saved a significant amount of money. The only time you should be paying anywhere close to retail for a pair of football boots is if you know that demand is high enough to where if you don't buy them right away, there's a high likelihood that they are going to sell out. But let's be honest, given the frequency of new releases these days, those drops are few and far between. Have a little bit of patience and do a little bit of research and you'll save a ton of money.